Now, there are two other main areas that you need to improve in to make your images stand out and get better. Number one is the color grading. You need to always make sure that you match your object or your model to the environment, to the scene. So if you have a very cool scene and your object was shot with very warm lights, or really orangey yellow type of tones, then when you drop that image into that cool scene, you need to match it to the blues and the coolness of that color. So that's number one. And so I'm going to show you how to use some color balance in Photoshop to make it really stand out. You can also use sharpening as well. Sharpening is another thing that I typically do to sharpen images to make them just stand out a little bit more. Okay, so I'm in Photoshop. You can see I've created this scene. We have this explorer looking in a cave for some treasure or something. We've got some vines there, and we've got this lantern light source. And so what we want to do is we want to color grade and match the colors based on the background. So if I just get rid of all of this, you can see the background. We've got a few images here. So I've got this basic rock type of background, and then I've got this desert shape that I put on top of it. So it's like a cave, desert, rock. I just stacked them on top of each other, and I added a blending mode on color on there to get this sort of nice effect. What we're going to do now is we're going to put those layers back on, and I'm going to color match now because you can see it's not cohesive with the actual scene and the lighting. So the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my adjustment at the top right corner and click on color balance. I'm going to bring this to the top, so it's going to affect all these objects here. Okay, and now what I want to do is I want to focus on adjusting it to more of a warm color, so the reds and the yellows. So I can see my midtones, my shadows, and my highlights. So first off, I'll start off with the shadows. Now with the shadows, I will bump up the red. As you can see that, if I go all the way, it's going to be too much. So we always want to make slight adjustments, little by little, okay? So I want to bump the red up like this, maybe like 25. And I don't want to go too yellow with that. It's not bad to have a bit of blue, but I'll go -4 blue, and red, I'll go maybe like 22. I think that's cool. I'm going to go into the midtones as well, and I'm going to bump to the yellow, bump up the red a little bit, like that. I think that's good. And then the highlights, go on the yellow a bit, so -5. We don't want to go too red. Cool, so we've got the highlights, the midtones that we did, and then the shadows. So now you can see that effect. If I turn off the color balance, you can see how much more it all matches with the background. It looks a lot better. You can see the vines as well, as you can see there. Now, that's a color adjustment on top of everything. As you can see there, I can bring the opacity down of that color adjustment. If it's too harsh, I can just drop it a bit. So I might drop it a little bit because it is looking a bit too red for me at the moment. So I put it to 70% opacity on that layer. Now, I'm going to group the ivy together by pressing Control G. The ivy, which is for the vines. I'm going to do a hue and saturation layer this time for this one. Now, what I want to do is I want to drop the saturation down. You can see they're too green. So what I want to do is I want to take out some of that green, okay? I just want to make sure that my hue and saturation layer is a clipping mask and it's clipped to the group of the ivy. So it should affect all the ivy plants, okay? So I'm going to bring it down. We don't want to make it too gray because it should have some life in it. But I want it to be like this toned down green, maybe a little bit gray. I can play with the hue and saturation if I want to go more like browny, as you can see, right? So we can go maybe a bit like brown or yellow, because it's like in a cave. It probably doesn't get much light. And I'm going to drop the lightness. We can pull the lightness a bit down, just like that. I think that works a lot better there. The only thing is this ivy on the left-hand side, it's a bit too dark, so it's got some light. So you can do levels, you can do curves. So I'm going to do curves for this one. I'll clip it to this. And what I want to do is just sort of bring the light down. So for the top corner, and I can just bring that down, as you can see. So you can see the vines without any of the adjustments. That's what it looked like before. And then you can see after, that's what it looks now. So it looks a lot better. It looks like it's suited for the actual scene, right? Now we can add a bit more detail, and we can actually add some, light here. Start a new layer. I'm going to press B for my brush tool, right? And I'm just going to make it big. I'm going to make it a soft brush, so make sure the hardness is down. I'm going to hold Alt, left click on the flame like this to get that sort of yellow tint, and then I can click on top of the lantern, okay? And so what I want to do is go to the blending modes in my layers, and I just scroll slowly down and see which one looks the best. So lighten looks pretty good. Screen works well. Linear dodge is okay. Overlay is decent as well. And hard light. So it's good to just test things out. And then I like zooming out, see what works better. So that's, I think, hard light or screen works pretty well. Hard light, screen, lighten. Yeah, I kind of like the hard light one. I think that's really cool. Okay, so we've got that lantern. Obviously, this photo was shot in a studio, so that the glass is a bit too white. So I could probably like turn it down a little bit. So I'm gonna go hue saturation. I'm gonna clip it to the woman. So I'm gonna press Control I, invert the mask, and then on that hue saturation layer, I'm gonna bring the saturation and lightness down. Okay, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna paint on the area where the glass is, as you can see there, just to darken it a bit because it's too light. You can see it's just very light because they're in a cave, right? There shouldn't be that much, like too much light. And so I'll turn back on that lantern like that. Boom. Okay, I think that looks a bit better. And what I can do is I can duplicate that layer, press Control J. And for this one, I might do like overlay or screen or linear dodge as well. That's pretty good. I'll drop the opacity to like 40%. So it just adds a bit more to the effect. And I can press Control T and maybe like, let's maybe scale it up a bit, you know, like that. So we've got this glow like this, as you can see, and it's adding a bit more effect. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new layer, bring that above the woman, and then I'm going to make that a clipping mask on the actual adventurer here. And so if I press B, and I'm just going to hold Alt or Option to sample a color from the lantern, a little like yellow tint. And you can see if I start painting now, it should be inside the woman because it's a clipping mask, okay? Just before I do that is I'm going to go to the background and I'm going to reduce the brightness a bit because it's too light. What I'm going to do now is go back to that layer and then we'll start painting. So I'm just going to call this highlights and I'm going to make it a bit small. And so I'm going to start painting on areas where I think the light will be reflecting off. I'm just going to make the opacity around 30%. Okay, that's too light. We'll bring it up to like 70. Okay, cool. That looks good. And so I'm just going to go on the edges here, thinking about how the light is reflected. And you'll notice the difference. Sometimes on the fingers it's a bit lighter because the skin, different materials have like different reactions to light as well, I think. Her face is very well lit because it's a studio shoot. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go and add exposure, clip it to the woman, and I'm going to Shift I to inverse the layer. And sorry, I'm going to double click on the exposure, and then I'm going to bring the exposure down, and then I'm going to basically just reveal on this side of the page. So I'm going to make the right side a bit darker because the light is coming from the left. So hopefully you can see the difference. So you see I just darkened up that area a little bit. And we just want to make sure, I'm going to press Shift X just to brighten up that face a little bit. Okay, and then I can come in back here to the highlight layer. So we've got our highlights there, makes it pop a little bit more. We can always go back and add some more. But I'm just trying to keep everything very, very simple. And then I'm going to add another layer. And I'm going to add, just like I did before, like make it shine a bit more. Like this. And drop the opacity down so I can bring it down. I just want to make it like very subtle, okay? I can leave it on normal, or we can do like soft light or lighten as well. Now what I want to do is also sharpen the eyes, because when you have a character, that's the core place you look to, right? So I want to show you a cool trick. So you can see how our eyes are not directly white. I'm going to add a new layer and call these eyes. I'm going to get my brush out, just a normal soft brush. Make the brush really small, okay? And now I want to use the white color, okay? So pick like a white, and I'm going to make the opacity around, we'll go like 50%. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint in the outside of the actual retina, the outside eye part. So I'm painting it to make it more lighter. Okay, and you'll notice the difference. So I can turn that off if I want. As you can see there, it adds a big difference. And then what I'm going to do is add another layer. Just a normal brush layer. I'm going to pick like, let's go like a greeny color. And we'll see, screen overlay, soft light. We'll go, we'll set it to color. There, so I'm painting inside the eye. And so now she's got green eyes, as you can see there. And then one last thing, as I usually do, Control-Shift-E. Then Control-Shift-A to open Camera Raw Filter. And then what I'm going to do is just play around. So the temperature will bump up the warmth a bit more. The exposure. Okay. Bring it down. Bump the contrast up. Highlights, bump, and the shadows will pull down a little bit. Don't want to make it too black. And then we're going to bump the texture up, not too much. We'll keep the clarity. Clarity doesn't have to be too much. Vibrance, I'll put up a little bit. And then we can go to, you've got the color mixer. You've also got color grading as well. So you can do final adjustments. So if we're feeling like, okay, you know, the shadows are lacking a little bit, maybe you want to push it more to the warmth again. You know, if you want to do that. And then we'll go the before and after. And look at that. Pops a whole lot more. I'm going to press OK. And then boom, there you go. There's our adventurer in the cave or whatever. And hope you guys enjoyed this one.